Farmer Horror Stories Volume 2, the first time I tried to create a farm partnership. Many of you who've been following me for a bit will know that I have 3 business partners in my current venture, Blackbird Farms. What you may not know is that I used to have a lot more partners about 4 years ago. These just charming people in this photo. And there's a lot of little tiny, horrifying minutiae of details I could talk about, but instead I'm going to talk about the big things that I kind of figured out in hindsight. These guys wanted to create something that was like a black and indigenous-led eco-village or agrarian commune or something like that. And I didn't see that coming. I grew up in Southeast DC in the 80s, so I didn't realize that black hipster was a thing. Anyway, my plan all along had been to build an institution that could generate wealth, employment, and affordable food. Those two visions are completely incompatible, but they do have something in common. Both visions need some kind of financial engine to keep them running. Now, I, in my naivete, believed that I could square this circle because we both need a financial engine, so why not let that engine be farming? They didn't want to do that. What they wanted to do, and I wish I was exaggerating, they wanted to monetize white guilt in perpetuity so they could cosplay it gardening. They wanted to create a food justice nonprofit that collected donations and grants so that they could pay for their commune where they gardened and raised sheep or goats for themselves. But before I realized that's what they wanted, and they were willing to admit that that's what they wanted, they tried their hand at raising livestock, and long story short, they were real bad at it. See, the way this was supposed to work is that we were going to operate kind of like a co-op. So my business would kind of get out of the farming part, okay? And we would focus on everything beyond the farm gate: processing, packing, sales, distribution, food safety, whatever. My partners had created their own business that I seeded with $50,000 of my money, and they were going to do the farming, do the livestock, do the on-the-land stuff. This was how I was supposed to square the circle of I wanted to create an institution that builds jobs and wealth and affordable food, and they wanted their commune. Why not have the center of their business being supplying my business with the stuff I need to build wealth, create jobs, etc.? It seemed like a great idea. And maybe it would have been if I hadn't been so irresponsible in how I selected people. They spent the seed money for their business on cars, weed. They'd spend some money on stuff they were supposed to, like animal feed, but then they would just let it sit out in the rain and go moldy. Mind you, they're running their own business, so I don't really know that any of this is going on. I'm worried about the business side and trying to figure out how are we going to get to $1 million, $1.2 million in revenue in order to make any of this work. All this crazy stuff is going on like I don't even see it. That is until they ran out of money and we had to have a come to Jesus discussion about what's broken, their work ethic or my business model. Turns out it was both. There's a reason I'm not running my business now as a co-op. It's just not a good model for scaling first-generation farmers, even if everybody has a great work ethic and really wants to do what they say they want to do. But the much bigger issue was this. These guys who had insisted on me not being involved in the farming at all, they wanted to do it on their own. They were doing such a bad job of it, and the animals were starting to fare so poorly that one of their own people basically ratted them out and told me that they were anticipating that once I found out what was going on the ground, that I would cut ties with them, and that they were hosting these little community dinners where they were having these weird fantasies of, if Chris bails on us, we're going to, say, light the henmobiles on fire with the animals inside of them. Apparently, these gripe sessions had been going on for months, so the project we were trying to put together was really popular, and it was drawing in a lot of people who wanted to get into farming but didn't have the access for whatever reason. So people would come in, introduced to kind of the mission that I put together, and they would be pulled aside by my quote-unquote partners at these community dinners where basically they would bitch and moan about the condition of everything and blame it on me. Again, conditions being things like animals not being fed on time, tons of feed being left out to just spoil and get rained on, animals not being fenced or housed properly, like all kinds of stuff. So when one of their guys rats them out about how things are going and their threats to freaking animals, I predictably do one of these. I cut ties with them. They respond by setting up a GoFundMe, and it's basically a giant feel sorry for us campaign that's resting on top of a character assassination of yours truly. They did this in the spring while I was at the beginning of the farm season trying to unscrew up everything they'd screwed up on the farm. To their credit, they got me completely by surprise. Sun Tzu would be proud. Their GoFundMe raised a good amount of money right up until the point where I had something to say. It's hard to cancel somebody when the person you're trying to cancel has a bunch of receipts like emails, text messages, Slack messages, all kinds of other hard evidence that they're in fact doing the things that they were accusing me of. So their support kind of evaporated. They took the almost $10,000 I think they'd raised on GoFundMe, and after promising more things to come and more projects and updating everybody on what they were doing on the food sovereignty front, they just disappeared, never to be heard from again. It took me 3 years to dig out of the hole they tried to bury me in. So all that to say this, if you decide to get into farming and to have partners, which you will probably need if you're first generation and you're not rich, then be very, very, very discriminating about who you choose to work with, because it will make or break you, and the wrong choice could ruin your life.